name is Andrew Weinberg, and I am honored to be the president of your board of trustees. My standing here before you today is nothing short of a miracle of Jewish perseverance, but not necessarily my own. For those of you who don't yet know me, I am the first generation American-born son of two people who were never originally destined to meet. My mother, born in 1924, was the only child of a family with a successful textile manufacturing factory in Lodz, Poland. Her father and mother, my grandparents, were progressive and innovative people for their time, working hard to make successes of themselves in business, but also in the very Catholic world of pre-war Poland, trying to ensure their place in the local community. My mother used to tell a story that one of the reasons her father was successful was he provided more than was expected. In his business, for example, this meant that every textile order from his factory arrived in his customers' hands with a noticeable extra amount of material above what had been originally ordered. And in their daughter, my grandparents pushed for more than was expected, pushing her to dream of a career as a doctor, something that at the time was almost unheard of for a woman. They lived a life of relative privilege, but had managed to carve out a harmonious coexistence with their Jewish and Catholic countrymen. But they were Polish Jews, not Jewish Poles. Some 360 miles to the south, my father, also born in 1924, was growing up in Vienna, Austria, also the only child in something of an upper-class family. Interestingly, his father was a veteran of World War I, an officer in the German army until the armistice of 1918. Following the end of that war, he became a successful lawyer in Vienna. For my father's parents, the horror of World War I was over, and they hoped their child would never witness anything like it. In him, they instilled an appreciation of the arts, exposing him to music, painting, and sculpture from an early age. But Vienna was not always a welcoming place for everyone. My father, middle school age by the mid-1930s, recalled often getting pulled into fights by non-Jewish kids for reasons he then did not understand. He and the other Jewish boys banded together and for a while gave as good as they got, he used to tell me. Overall, his family had a reasonably good life, living within Austrian society and wanting for little. But they were Austrian Jews, not Jewish Austrians. So these two people in two different parts of Europe, growing up as Jews living among non-Jews, able to coexist and by some measure thrive in their respective areas. But by their own experiences, they were never fully accepted by their surrounding societies as a whole. And standing back to look at their respective situations, there was no conceivable way they would ever cross paths in life, let alone meet and marry. Then, everything changed. Beginning with the 1938 German annexation of Austria, Jewish children were not welcome in schools and their parents were shunned from their workplaces or businesses. By the time of the 1939 German invasion of Poland and later, the Jewish situation in Europe was dire. My father, age 16 in early 1940, was imprisoned in Austria. His parents had been taken away months earlier. By the miracle of Henrietta Zold and the Youth Aliyah program, he was scooped up along with thousands of other Jewish children from occupied Europe and taken in groups via Yugoslavia to Palestine in 1941. He never saw any of his family again. He was the only survivor. He last heard from his mother in two tiny letters, each limited to 25 words, and both of which I still have, that came from her at the Jewish ghetto in Dachau in occupied Poland in late 1942. Those letters were delivered to him at his school in Palestine by the International Red Cross. She is believed to have later been lost at the Treblinka death camp. By that time, he had lied about his age and joined the British Army in the war effort in North Africa in World War II. After the war, he joined the fledgling Israeli army, the Haganah, in Palestine, fighting through to the end of Israel's War of Independence. Somehow, through all of that, he survived. My mother also had great challenges, to say the least. Her city was captured by the Germans very early in the war. Ultimately, nearly all of her remaining family in Poland perished, leaving only her and her mother in the Warsaw Ghetto. She survived in part due to her unusual ability to speak English. The resistance movement in Poland at the time needed English-speaking people able to communicate with the Allies to support their efforts. Because of her role, she and her mother were among the lucky few who escaped from the ghetto through the sewers before its destruction by the Germans in 1943. She spent the remaining war years using a false non-Jewish name and papers, working in a sugar factory until being liberated by the Russians in 1945. For reasons never clearly explained to me, she and her mother returned to Lodz after the war, where she continued her studies, still under an assumed name. By 1949, she was a third-year medical student, and at this point, she and her mother immigrated to Israel. Somehow, through all of this, not only did she survive, but her dream of being a doctor was almost fulfilled. Israel was now a country at the ripe old age of 5 years when my parents met at the home of a mutual artist friend in 1953. My father was still in the Israeli army, but was also pursuing an art degree at Emanu-El Academy of Art in Jerusalem. My mother was completing her final year of medical school at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem and became a doctor in 1954. They married that same year at a small wedding attended by several friends, including my father's commanding officer, an unknown captain named Ariel Sharon, one day to become Prime Minister of Israel. Sorry to name drop. Life in Israel at that time was difficult with little opportunity. My father had no remaining family anywhere, but my mother had several family members in the U.S. who had luckily emigrated from Poland before the war. In 1957, they gathered their few belongings and set off for New York. This was not a direct journey, but that's a good story for another day. There, my mother reestablished her medical career with a residency at a Brooklyn hospital, while my father began a career that took him into industrial art and design. These two broken lives were on the road to recovery, but with so much of their families gone from the war, they still felt there was much to do. In 1961, several months before I was born, new opportunities arose in California, and they set out by car in a Ram for a new beginning. Once there, they began to reestablish themselves, working hard, raising both my sister and me. From as far back as I can remember, we had a Jewish presence in our lives. Every week we celebrated Shabbat with candles, challah, and wine, and of course all of the holidays. And at the earliest opportunity, they joined a local temple, Temple Emanu-El in San Francisco. My parents were always adamant that despite the differences among us, being Jewish and everything that came with it was important, and it was our responsibility to stay connected. These two people, so horribly beaten down by recent history due to their Jewish identity, were fighting back, doing their part to rebuild and replace what had been lost. My parents were not just members of a temple, they were connected temple members. Our family was part of the Temple Couples Club, their version of our Havarah. My father served a stretch on the temple board, and both of them made sure to have a personal relationship with all of the rabbis in our cantor. As far as us kids, they made sure we never missed Sunday school, that we both went through B'nai Mitzvah, and both also completed confirmation, which at the time included a 6-week group trip to Israel, a defining moment for 16-year-olds. We were doing it, period. My parents were not wealthy. There were times I can recall when finances were tight, but the temple and my family's obligations to it, financial and otherwise, were always high on the list. They gave as they could. Long after my sister and I moved away on our own, my parents, for the rest of their lives, remained temple members, staying involved, taking classes, and maintaining contact with temple friends. I probably should have warned you, this is going to be quite a story. For those of you who might be interested to see it, I brought along a small collection of key documents from that period in their lives, including those 2 tiny letters, and they're on display in the lobby here, so have a look on your way out if you like. There are 2 lessons I see from this story. The first and obvious one is that these 2 people, despite an overwhelming set of circumstances, were able to rebuild their lives, restart their families, and ultimately perpetuate their Jewish identities into a new generation. They were truly exceptional personalities, and their impact on me and my direction is obvious. I stand before you, the proud father and husband in a next-generation Jewish family, grateful for what the Jewish community gave my parents, and I'm eager to give back. But there's another story here as well, and that's of their temple, what it offered them, and what it can be to all of us. This is a place for more than bar mitzvahs, weddings, and high holiday services. The connection among us is fundamental. It's our Jewish heritage. With that comes a common understanding and outlook on life that is truly unique. We do things our own way. The temple allows us to share that identity and connection with each other in a variety of ways. Each way allows our Jewish heritage to persevere. Whether it's Havarah events among families, brotherhood or sisterhood, youth programs, adult education, volunteering in the office, or even temple projects serving outside the community. One thing is for sure, we are all Jewish doing it. It serves the temple well, serves the community well, but it also serves us well. We are all better people, not just better Jews, for playing a part to perpetuate our community. For many generations, in many different ways, being closely connected as a community has served the Jewish people well, and quite probably was the key to their survival. Our challenge now is to help maintain that member-community connection. In today's world, temple members have many obligations to manage, but none comes with the history and potential potential future of this obligation. Your temple leadership, staff, and clergy are working hard to keep the temple relevant in members' lives. It is an ever-changing mix of traditional ideas and fresh approaches. Great things have been happening lately, such as we have a brand new religious school committee made up of current religious school parents, all of whom are dedicated, motivated, and deeply invested in making our school the best it can be. Religious school enrollment is up this year. Brotherhood has energetic and innovative new leadership that has already invigorated the group, helping it to be even more supportive for the temple. The Tikkun Olam Committee, the social action channel of the temple, has been reorganized into 4 even better focused subgroups, each targeted to make an even bigger impact on the community. Our temple teen youth group has fantastic new teen leadership and also an inspiring new senior advisor, herself a veteran of the temple youth programs when she was at that age, and now she's a parent of teens in that program. And just 3 weeks ago, we hosted a brand new back-to-school barbecue lunch for all of the religious school families right on the temple front patio. It was a great community event, and several prospective member families who attended ended up joining the temple several days later. We're thrilled to have them join our family. As I said earlier, we're working hard to make the temple community a better place for all of its members. We set this important objective, but we cannot do it alone. We need you. Let me say that again. The temple needs you and your support. All of us need to maximize our support, engagement, and connection with this congregation so that the future will include the community we have known and loved. We grew up with this special heritage, nurtured us, made us who we are, and brought us all to this spot here together. It is of supreme importance that our community perseveres for the benefit of new generations. Whether that happens is completely in our hands. Today is the beginning of the new year, a time for making resolutions towards our future. Let us all, standing here today, make a common resolution to substantially increase our support and our contribution to this Jewish community